like, how do you sit him down and tell him that racism still exists?
Sure.
Because he doesn't see color yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very difficult conversation and very emotional for me.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say he grasped everything I said?
Sure.
I think he got the gist of it, but it was very difficult.
And what was the most difficult part for you when you had that conversation?
When he first saw the video on TV, I think that was the explaining to him what happened and how do he go forth trusting police officers. Like I said earlier, my older daughter is going through the academy to be a marshal, so
Sure.
he worries about her now.
Sure.
Like, if she gonna have to deal or face anything like this when she cross over. So that was the most disturbing part, trying to make him understand or trying to help him understand what was happening on that video.
And did you feel? How did you feel? Did you feel resentful? Were you tense? I mean, what were the emotions going through when you were having that conversation?
I was angry. I was angry because I had to have that conversation.
Wow.
It baffles me that we're still going through the same thing that we went through in 1920, pretty much. Nothing's changed. We're still here doing the same two-step. Like, when does it change? And
Sure.
how do we get it to change?
Sure.
So, yeah, I was more angry than anything.
Wow. Yeah, and that seems to be the overwhelming theme that I hear a lot, and I know I had expressed that same sentiment of having to have that conversation with some of my mentees and in particular some of the guys that have dated my daughter, having that conversation. And I was very resentful, saying that I don't think that white fathers have to have that same conversation. To have that conversation to say, look, if you get stopped, make sure your stuff is together. Do you have your license? Do you have your registration? Be careful, make sure you turn. So let me check your car to make sure your taillight isn't out. That kind of
All
checklist.
the windows down,
Yes.
hands clear. Yeah.
Right. That, I have to go through a checklist. When my daughter leaves the house and she's a grown woman, and I go out and look at her car. That's the part of where I came from, my past life. But I look at her car to make sure the taillight isn't out, the headlights are working, the turn signals are working, because I don't want her to get stopped, quite frankly. And, and you shouldn't feel that way. And yes, sir.
Think about this, Mike, just very briefly with
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Floyd. Even if you had given him all those instructions, there's nothing he did. Let's say that he was your son, and
Yes,
you
sir.
gave him all those instructions. None of that would have stopped what happened.
That's
because
right.
he was laying on the ground. He wasn't fighting. He was compliant. He didn't fight when they brought him out of the store. If the same instructions you give your daughter, or Shannon gives her son, or I gave my son, the sad part about this case,
Yeah.
if you'd have checked the tail lights and the headlights and
Yeah.
everything else, none of that talk would have prevented this.
That's
Because
right.
in reality, he was compliant, laying on his stomach. So all those things you told him to do, he did. And
Yeah,
he
that's true.
still ended up being killed.
Wow.
That's what's even worse about this particular situation. Sometimes we get to say, well, why didn't you put your hand on the steering wheel? Or why didn't you turn the interior lights on as soon as you get pulled over, so they don't even have to guess? You turn the interior lights on in the car so they come up. But even if we'd given him the best of instructions, everything you told your daughter, I've told my son, Shannon's told her son.
Sure.
Even if you'd have done all of that, in this particular case, it's so egregious that even with all those wonderful instructions, he didn't violate any of those rules, and he still ended up dead.
And in the one conversation that is had, and I'm sure all of us have had that conversation with some of our friends, is why is the African American community still so hostile towards the police with all of the progress that's been made. And there have been some good things happening across the country, and we could talk about examples in Prince George's and out here in Vegas and so forth. And there is some good stuff going on. I was on the radio this morning and was asked a similar question. And the one thing that I was saying, particularly in Las Vegas, now with my fraternity, we have done some things with the Metropolitan Police Department out here, and they've been extremely receptive. Every time we put an idea past, they've been right there to support us and so forth and so on. But the thing that I shared was that Vegas is a transient city, and you have people here from all over the country. So along with moving your television and your sofa and all those other things, you also bring your emotional baggage with you. And so if you were living in San Francisco or Boston or Charleston, South Carolina, and you've had experiences that were not pleasant with law enforcement, you still carry those things for a long time. And so the next time you get stopped, no matter where you are, you're like, okay, is this going to be the same experience that I had when I was stopped on Highway 5 outside of Charleston? That those things don't go away, particularly if you felt that you were not treated courteously or with the level of respect that an adult in the community should be treated with. And among other reasons. And I was just wondering, what you and Shannon's thoughts were on that particular aspect of things.
One of the things I would say is that I think it's a generalization that the black community in general have an antagonistic relationship with the police. I think it's the other way around, because I know I live in Baltimore and I'm automatically concerned whenever the police pull me over for all those reasons that we talked about. But I'm not angry with them. I'm glad they're here, especially with the murders we have in this city. So it's not an idea that I'm not glad they exist. I just want good police officers. So I'm not antagonistic against all police, because I think we need policing in a society that is based on pure money and the philosophy of capitalism, where everything is valued at money. I think you're going to have some people who always, and history dictates that or demonstrates that, have had some transgressions. I think that the police have created in some cities a relationship that causes it to be antagonistic. And in other cities, police have created a relationship. If you look at what they've done in Camden, New Jersey, Mayor Dana Red was mayor. She came in, the police department was out of control. She tried to negotiate with the FOP. The FOP said, we're not making these changes. So the mayor did something I haven't seen a mayor do almost anywhere in the country. She said, well, if I can't change the police department, I'm going to dissolve it. So she actually abolished the police department, worked with the governor, brought the county police in, used her budget to pay county police to police the city until she could reestablish a new police department. That's how revolutionary she was, because she believed that people want good policing, and if the police department or the culture wouldn't allow itself to change, then she did something. And this is an African-American female mayor who's saying that I'm not going to just talk this thing to death. I'm not going to sit here and negotiate with you about treating people fairly. I'm going to blow this thing up and rebuild it. And that's how I'm going to negotiate. And then the people who want to come back have got to reapply for their jobs in the new police department. And I'm going to base that on your number of complaints you had during the time you were here. So I don't think in general we dislike the police, because we would have never became police officers. Sure. I think that relationships and activities such as the Gun Trace Task Force here, the Freddie Gray situation, have made people distrust the police. But I don't think it's it's not innate for you to dislike the people who technically are supposed to protect and serve you.
Right. The thing that made this one so difficult, I think, because everybody had the same thing. Sometimes we get to it when we see the aftermath of what happened, see the result, and unfortunately we become somewhat desensitized to that to a certain degree. But I think this was the first time that I saw. I'm sitting here watching it, and I'm seeing what's happening before I really knew what it was, and I'm like, oh man, the police done messed up again, and I'm thinking it's going to end, and I'm watching, and it's still on, and he's still saying. So you're watching. This is the first time that I've seen the life leaving someone as it was that, and that I think that's what struck people, is that it's all of that. It's the attitude of the dude who had his knee on his neck, the arrogance, the privilege, all of that was present. He was like looking like posing for the cameras that were watching. He knew he was on camera, and I'm trying to see myself in his place. I'm like, dude, exactly. You got to see all these people with cameras out on you, and you don't give a damn. You got your knee on, you got your hand on your knee while you, in your pocket, like putting more pressure on what it is. And then I'm watching the brother and the life is leaving him to the point, he's going out of consciousness. And,
that's right.
And then his eyes get empty. And then, saying anything about his mother or someone. Before I knew it, I'm watching, I said, I just watched somebody kill somebody, which is the first time I've seen, and that's not comfortable either. I've seen dead bodies before. I've seen dead people, but I've never seen somebody take somebody's life before. And I don't think a lot of other people saw that. Because, the other ones where they show the cops run around and they shoot, they warn you, or you hear the gunshots, but they never let you see the person fall on the news. This, I think, caught everybody by surprise because they were watching. They're like, okay. And so, you look at that, you see what's going on. And then the question becomes, I don't know what the lawsuit's going to be, but how many of these lawsuits can cities take? And how far are we from a for hire police force? I mean, is that something that we get to, that, you know what? We can't trust you all to do this thing the right way. We're going to bring in, and is that better or worse? I mean, to me, it sounds worse, because if you get to the point where you got cops for hire, that's something else. I mean, maybe that's for another time. But I mean, my mind is just going in all these other directions, like what else is going to happen? But I think what made this so difficult, why people keep watching it, because I think it's the first time for a lot of people that they've actually seen somebody's life taken. And that was what was hard for me. And I unfortunately, before I had known it, I had watched the whole thing. And then I couldn't unsee it. I still can't unsee it. And I saw it at the end where they pulled him and kind of dragged him limp and flipped him over. And I was like, wow, this really went down. And I think that's what's fueled a whole lot of this, where you got, even people who want to ignore it, even as they say back in the day, the good white people got to say something. They're like, oh Lord, we can't just sit by this happen. And it was a sad time on one end, but it angers you. But at the same time, you're like, there's got to be some, as we talk about order and disorder, there's got to be some order to the anger, so that it's channeled in such a way that we don't come out of this the same way that we went into it. That something's got to change, and it's got to be real.
I agree. I don't believe all policemen are bad. I think there are some good ones, but how do we pull the good ones out of the bad ones? I agree with you. That was the first time I've ever seen something like that, someone's life just taken by a police officer's hand, and he had a look on his face like,
that's what
I
do.
He didn't care. Like, there's nothing you can do to me.
Yep.
It was just like I can't even describe the look. We've been talking about it, like there was like a smirk on his face. And the other officer that was standing in front of him kept walking back and forth. I don't know if he was walking back and forth so they couldn't see everything that was going on. And he had a look of if he didn't want to be there. But he didn't do anything either, So no, I don't believe all policemen are bad. We just got to figure out how to get the bad ones out, because that's what's hurting us. And with all of this going on, what are we going to come out to? what is it going to look like when it's said and